Hello and welcome to episode 349 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here once again with...
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm well, sir. How are you? Welcome back after being away.
I was away. I am back. My brain doesn't know which time zone or where I am, and I am exceedingly tired. Turns out when you get older, jet lag becomes even more of a monster that you just can't run away from. So I'm going to get through this podcast, but it's not going to be easy.
We believe in you. Welcome back.
That makes one of you.
Welcome back. Getting back into the swing of things. So you were gone for about 2 weeks. So we had fake Jason on episode 347.
Oh, that sounds like Jeremy to me.
Yep. We had fake Jason. He did his best. And then last week, my new colleague, Daniel, joined us for an episode. And now, Jason, you are back from Seoul, or South Korea generally, and Japan generally. So
Yes.
Anything to note from your travels, good sir?
Yeah, but I've been banished back to Dulles, unfortunately. So the travel keeps on coming. Hopefully this is the last of the year. But no, it was a lot of fun. I hadn't been to Seoul since I attended IATA AGM in 2019. So it had been a minute, but really just kind of ate our way through South Korea and Tokyo. We had a great time with Seth Miller, who we talked to a couple weeks ago. We summed up how we got there. Again, we got there very different ways. But thankfully, on the way home, I was able to do a cash upgrade to business on the way home through Tokyo to New York on American, which was fine, I guess. Wasn't JAL, wasn't ANA, but it was a flat seat, so I was happy. But it's always look forward to what has become an annual trip to Asia now. So not super excited to be home, but it was a great trip.
Well, welcome back. I made it back to Chicago much more easily than I made it to Stockholm. We didn't talk about this last week, but I decided that I was going to fly out of Chicago on the day that we had our first proper Chicago snowstorm in more than 2 years.
Yeah. And Chicago O'Hare is, an airport famously known for competent snow time operations.
Well, what was really interesting about watching everything and enjoying my delay, that ended up being a 4-hour delay getting out of the airport, was seeing how well things were actually running when things were running well. So it was a tale of many terminals. So there were clearly things that were happening, not where I was, that were going very well. Snow clearance, de-icing, things of that nature. And then sitting at T5, it became a air traffic control special where you had to park planes somewhere, but then you had to make the decision about which planes were going to be parked in front of which other planes. And so it was one of those things where so I was flying SAS. And so we needed Etihad to push back so that Iberia could take that gate, so that SAS could move forward, so that a United flight could pull behind it, so that a Delta flight could come off a gate so that SAS could go in.
Of course.
And it was like those puzzles where it's a square pieces and there's like one missing and then you have to make the picture.
I can never.
It was like playing that, but with airplanes.
And it's just unnecessarily complicated at O'Hare, since all international flights, I'm pretty sure, have to go into T5, right? So you have all these flights
for at
there,
least the next couple of years.
And then you got to drag them out of there and tow them elsewhere, which just unnecessarily complicates everything and makes everything so much more difficult. It's just, that's got to stop at some point. But I hope they've got a plan, right?
The plan is in place. They're building. The construction is happening. So it's on its way to the global terminal is in slow progress, but it's there. And eventually you will just land and depart from a terminal.
Wow, what a concept.
If you're flying internationally, it's a miracle. It's coming soon. That was going out, but much easier coming in. On the other hand, while I was flying back from Stockholm, I was keeping up on the news coming out of India.
Oof,
and we talked about this last week.
Great.
Not great. We talked about this on last week's episode, kind of a partial reason behind why the meltdown of IndiGo happened. But to recap, There were new rest duty requirements for flights that went into place at the beginning of the month. But IndiGo's operations survived until they were hit by poor weather. And then the lack of planning on how to run a low-cost operation with minimal rest periods in the face of new regulations and bad weather hit home. They ended up canceling thousands of flights, and things just got worse from there. Because not only did the airline screw up, they screwed up very publicly at a time the Indian Prime Minister was playing host to Russian President Vladimir Putin on an international stage, making a statement. And the Prime Minister then has to turn his attention to a low-cost airline, which has massively screwed up not only its operations, but the spillover into other operations, because now these other airlines are struggling to deal with all of the passengers that are going, I had an IndiGo flight and now I don't know what to do.
Ouch.
So the government did a couple things. One, they got rid of the regulations for now.
Oh, well, that's a great way to respond to putting regulation in place. And when a private entity can't handle it, just scrap the safety regulation you put in place. I don't like that at all. But
yeah, exactly.
You got to do something to react to it. But I don't love tossing out the new safety rule you just put in place. It's not great.
Again, it's not like this happened without warning. It's not like the government, something happened on Tuesday and the government on Wednesday said, here are the new rules. This happened over years and in phases. This is just the second phase of the rules going into effect. So at the moment, IndiGo has been granted an exemption from Indian regulators. They're going to review IndiGo's ability to manage their schedule periodically, improve operations and the crew rest period, and they have to have a 30-day plan to achieve full compliance with the new rules on the flight duty limits.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this change of rules in India just brings India up to basically the rest of the world's standard here. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, there's nothing particularly
crazy
onerous about these rules. I mean, they have some local peculiarity, but for the most part, they're industry standard rules. I mean, this affected IndiGo's operations specifically, but not their wet lease operations because those were already operating under even more restrictive rest rules. So nothing that other airlines around the world haven't already accommodated.
Right. I think that's what it's so stark about this particular case with IndiGo is that, every other airline in the world with the same regulations kind of figured this out. But IndiGo, it's not like this is some over-the-top onerous regulation being put in place in India.
It's not like pilots need to rest for a week after. It's not like each pilot needs a week of rest and some sort of spa treatment between flights. That's not what we're talking about.
No, that's the kind of thing that only a U.S. airline pilot union could get worked in to the contract.
Good for them then. What the Indian Civil Aviation Ministry also did was cap fares on domestic flights writ large as airlines struggled to deal with the fallout. Those caps were quite a bit higher than normal pricing, but they were capped nonetheless. IndiGo was also ordered to cut its schedules by 10% as of yesterday, the 9th of December. They had previously, earlier in the week, been ordered to cut schedules by 5%. So this takes it a bit higher. As of today, the 10th of December, it seems that the situation has stabilized. The schedule cuts, along with the changes that the airline is making, have allowed them to service all of their destinations, if not all of their frequencies. So things look like they're moving in the right direction. But the upper management of IndiGo has a lot of explaining to do. And they're going to be held to account, it seems, by the DGCA and possibly India's parliament. Moving to the US, we now have a prime integrator for the ATC modernization effort known as the brand new Air Traffic Control System, or BNACTS.
Oh, rolls right off the tongue.
Right.
Say it again?
BNACTS.
Oh, okay. It's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
change it. But tell
Well,
me, what is a prime integrator for ATC modernization? Because it sounds
so there
frankly.
you go. It sounds fun, is what it sounds. Peraton has been selected as the prime integrator for the ATC modernization, meaning that they have the job of keeping every single entity working on the ATC modernization effort on track, under budget, on time, all those good fun things. Peraton is a former division of what is now L3 Harris. They have experience in this respect. They've worked on air traffic control before, but they have not done FAA related air traffic control modernization efforts, which they say helps them come in from the outside and not make some of the same mistakes as those who have come before it.
How would they know they're making those mistakes if they've never participated in something like this before? I guess that's one way to root out mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, this is all part of the $12.5 billion, what FAA Administrator Bedford is calling a down payment on the future. In the announcement this week, Bedford said that this is a down payment and $20 billion more will be needed over the course of this effort to bring U.S. air traffic control up to, I guess, state of the art is what they're going for. The first priorities, Jason, of the new prime integrator will be transitioning the air traffic control system's remaining copper infrastructure to modern fiber and establishing a new digital command center.
Ooh, digital command center. That's a lot more fun sounding than an analog command center, which I actually know I kind of like the sound of an analog command center a lot better.
It does sound less fun, however.
It does sound less fun, but isn't the transition of copper wire to fiber and whatever else, hasn't that been ongoing for forever?
That's been ongoing for a very long time, but this first priority will be to finish that job. So there's remaining infrastructure that needs to be transitioned. They are going to do that first, establish a digital command center, and then go from there. There are all sorts of upgrades across the air traffic control system that are planned. We've talked about those in previous episodes. And this organization, Peraton, will be the organization running the show and the one answering directly to the FAA and the DOT. So we will, I'm sure, hear more from them soon.
Good luck to them.
In news that has been years in the making, Spirit Aerosystems is no more. The sale of the component parts of Spirit Aerosystems to Boeing, Airbus, and a few other third parties has finished. Boeing is now responsible for its own destiny, again, before it spins them off at some point in the future after this round of consolidation. Airbus has taken its work packages and a $400 and some odd million payment for its trouble and will go off and continue to build things like A350 fuselages, A220 wings, and other assorted components, bringing that stuff in-house. And Boeing's big prize here is the 737 line. Spirit produces, or did produce before it is Boeing again, the majority of the 737 fuselage, along with a variety of other components for Boeing's other aircraft. Now that they have completed this acquisition, they continue on the march of reducing traveled work, increasing quality, making sure that aircraft are built on schedule, and hopefully move forward into the future. However, that doesn't mean that Boeing's going to launch a new aircraft project anytime soon. Speaking on the 2nd of December, Boeing CFO Jay Malave said, quote, "The market has to be ready. The technology has to be ready. The Boeing company has to be ready." And he finished the quote saying, quote, "We don't believe any of those factors have been met in any way."
Wow. Okay. None of those factors. So the technology is not even ready for a next gen aircraft.
Technology's
none
not
of
ready.
that.
The market's not ready. And the Boeing company is not ready. No one's
I
ready.
feel like the market has been saying it's been ready for quite a while now.
Well,
So
I feel like we've reached the point where the market's no longer ready. I mean, the market may have been ready.
we've come full circle that the market was ready, but it's been so long that the market said, you know what we were ready for, we don't want anymore. So come up with something new.
Pretty much. I think that's where we're at as far as this goes. So that'll be interesting to see how that language changes. I'm going to be looking to see how that discussion evolves. Now that we know that the check marks are the market, the technology, and the company, now that we have those benchmarks, I'm going to be looking to see how that language changes over time. It'll be really interesting to see how Boeing starts talking about the market and what the market needs and the technology. And I think the Boeing company being ready, I think the Spirit acquisition is a big part of that. And I think the continued march towards remembering how to build aircraft is an important part of that. And so I think it's really interesting that those are kind of the three benchmarks that they laid out.
That's the tricky part. I know we've talked about that one extensively is, does Boeing remember how to build a new aircraft? We've talked to John Ostrower about that in the past, and it's still a very legitimate question, especially now if they have to start over and think about new technologies and things that may not even exist at this point. It's going to be a long run before we get to the point where Boeing is ready to do something. But this is progress, I guess, in the right direction.
This is progress. I would say right direction. Absolutely. Let's go back to Europe and talk about an acquisition that I didn't think was going to happen because I thought a different acquisition was already a done deal. I thought that LOT had said, hey, we're going to take over SmartWings and Czech Airlines. And everyone said, okay.
And that too.
And then Turkey's Pegasus said, we'll take it. And so they shall, I guess.
There's a lot of these massive acquisition, but someone else swoops in for an acquisition at the last minute kind of thing going on. What was it with Warner Brothers right now with the Netflix buyout, and then Paramount, of course, coming in and say, oh, no, we're going to hostily take over instead. So there's a lot of that going on now. But this one, Pegasus, is not who I expected to be swooping in to snatch up anyone, let alone SmartWings.
Yeah, I mean, the fleet commonality is nil. I mean, Pegasus's operation is...
They got a little Airbus, I guess.
Right. But I mean, they're mostly Airbus. You've got SmartWings operating a Boeing fleet. You have some overlap in network, but it's just a different animal. I'm finding this very interesting to get my heads around.
Yeah, you say Boeing fleet, but does this include the part of SmartWings that's really CSA with the A220s that I flew on not all that long ago?
I mean, it includes everything as far as I know.
Both brands, both CSA and SmartWings, which I still don't really quite understand the difference, if there is any, because I know it was like a holding parent company that actually owned the brand, but so does Pegasus just kind of consume all of it?
I think so. I mean, we're still finding out exactly how this is going to work because not only is Pegasus taking them over, they're taking them over via a new Dutch subsidiary because of ownership rules. And so you have, I guess, enough directors within the company with dual citizenship that allow them to operate this new subsidiary so that they can own the EU airline. So it's one of those things where there's a lot of paperwork involved, and who knows exactly how this is going to shake out. Again, this is brand new, and none of the approvals have been met. So the deal could look very different by the time it actually closes. And who knows, LOT might get to use its "We Bought SmartWings" banner yet.
Just store it in the basement until you need it. It's not going to hurt anyone.
There you go. Let's go back to the US and talk about Spirit Airlines because they announced this week that they're cutting more aircraft. This came out of an agreement through the bankruptcy court between it and International Aero Engines, which is the half or portion maker of the Pratt & Whitney geared turbofan engine. And in that agreement, they said they're going to give Spirit $140 million in compensation for prior losses related to the GTF engine inspections, repairs, and off-wing time because of the A320neo and A321neo fleet. What we found out from Spirit is that they will end up with approximately 28 A320neo family and 78 A320ceo family aircraft for now. They also
Wow.
said they could go as low as 88 total aircraft.
That's crazy.
Down from 230 something,
Yeah.
234, I think, at
With
max.
orders for plenty more coming. Spirit was still taking quite a number of A321 Neos up until very recently. So this is a mere shadow of its former self.
Yeah. Spirit is also canceling planned pilot furloughs. That's according to Reuters reporting, saying that because enough pilots have left on their own, they don't need to furlough those pilots anymore.
Sometimes, problems just work themselves out. We didn't
Yeah.
solve the problem. We let it work itself out. And at the same
Yeah.
time, our friend Seth Miller has uncovered that Spirit has agreed with American to sell coveted gates back to American for $30 million for preferential access to gates, just gates G8 and G10 through September 2027. So that's quite a chunk of change, but you only get to do that once. You get rid of those gates, you don't get them, can't have them back, you can't sell it again. But $30 million for gates at O'Hare, American really wants them, and at this point, Spirit probably doesn't need them all that bad. So they really are selling off pretty much anything that they don't need at this point, which was the plan.
Yeah, exactly. And that sale comes as American hunts for any foothold to regain share at Chicago after being pounded for years by United. So I think that's a really interesting, we'll see how much it helps American, but it'll be really interesting because those two gates sit in between United's operations, which is actually quite interesting now as United has continued to expand its gate presence.
As long as American doesn't forget about these gates after it pays for them and, has them taken away and redistributed to United, American has got to really learn its lesson to keep better track of its assets so they don't get taken away and given to its competitors. Because this $30 million is not nothing, but they probably didn't want to have to spend that. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, exactly. In Qatar news, this is one of those things where I don't have a good explanation for it, and I'm just bringing it up to maybe get someone to email us with a good explanation. Qatar Airways CEO is out. Badr Mohammed Al-Mir gone. New CEO.
Hadn't been there all that long.
Hadn't been there very long. After Abu Bakr had been there for decades.
Which we still don't really have a good idea of what happened to him. He just kind of disappeared one day. And then I believe the CEO that they put in that they're now punting, he was the CEO of the airport, I believe, right?
Yeah, he was the chief operating officer of the airport. And Hamad Ali Al-Khater is also the new CEO of Qatar Airways and is also the now former chief operating officer of the airport. So it's just a pipeline.
Yeah, there's clearly a line of succession there. Yeah, that reign of CEO at Qatar that doesn't feel like there was much impact from this new CEO. So I don't know why. We don't know why he's suddenly out, but maybe he was a little too quiet. I don't know, but didn't seem to be making all that much in the way of waves at Qatar. But
we're used to the person who runs this airline being very shouty.
Yes, we're talking about making waves. The prior CEO made tsunamis. So we kind of overcorrected a little bit in that direction. I don't know.
Perhaps.
We'll never know. We'll never truly know.
But you can email us at podcast@fr24.com if you know, or maybe just have an idea, because at this point, who's to say?
Sure.
Jason, in an effort to make things slightly less confusing when traveling through Paris, Charles de Gaulle is renaming its terminals, but I'm still confused by the map.
Yeah, there are a few things in the world more confusing than coming into CDG at 4:42 a.m., jet lagged off a U.S. origin transatlantic flight and figuring out where exactly you are in de Gaulle and where exactly you need to go, because the terminal naming is an art, and the art was just really taken to the extreme at CDG between terminals. I mean, they all started with T, but then you had T2G, T2EM, T2F, T2EK, T2C, T2, like they were just, it repeated. If you went from T2A to T2B, you would think that was really easy, but it turned out to not really be that easy. And the plan is to move everything to a much more rational terminals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Except Terminal 5 is two buildings that are not connected, while part of Terminal 5 is actually connected to Terminal 6. I don't know. It's an improvement. It doesn't fully solve the problem, but it's, again, a step in the right direction.
There you go. All right. Next time we're passing through, we'll figure it out and see what happens.
No. We're still going to get on the wrong bus, and we're still going to get on the wrong train and the wrong escalator and end up, I don't know. It's one of the most confusing places. The transfers aren't terrible, but I feel like a lot of people were just confused over the years by, I have to go from T2E to T2G, and I don't know. But I'm happy that they're at least rationalizing
a train, a hot air balloon.
Rationalization is just say Terminal 1 through Terminal 7, and we can take it from there. We'll figure it out.
There you go. When we talk about aviation accidents and incidents, we often talk about how there's not one thing that caused the problem, that for something to go wrong, things have to build up over time. And a recent Australia Transportation Safety Board report really puts that into light. What happened was a Qantas 737 departed with the wrong weight and balance takeoff calculation. Nothing bad happened.
Not something that has not happened before.
Yeah. It did not result in any accident or any injuries, but just one of those things where it was from the get-go, things just built up. So this 737 was originally flying from Perth to Sydney. There were storms in Sydney, so the aircraft diverted to Canberra. Then, once they were on the ground, they decided that they will refuel and then they will take off and try and make it to Sydney because the storm has passed.
All sounds good up until this point.
Yep. Passengers were allowed to disembark because 17 of those passengers on board the aircraft were trying to get to Canberra anyway. So they said, okay, yeah, go ahead and get off the plane and hey, we're here already. Then, because this was a new flight, they needed to create a new flight in the Qantas system. As part of the creation of that new flight.
By new flight, you mean like Qantas Flight 1, now it's Qantas Flight 1 Alpha or something like that.
They just needed to go through the back-end system for how Qantas dispatches the flights. And as part of that, they are called customer journey leads at Qantas. That person committed a mistake. They entered the wrong aircraft code into the flight diary. And they said that it was a 717.
Ugh. This was a year ago. Did they still have 717s in the fleet? They did, right?
Yeah. So what happened there is that aircraft, because of the switch from 737 to 717, the system that they have immediately offloaded 11 business class passengers and 40 economy passengers because of the reduced capacity from aircraft to aircraft.
So it just booted passengers off the flight.
Exactly. So this was a typo that was immediately noticed by that person. They had a supervisor come over, they unlocked the flight, and they went about everything. But they didn't look at the weight and balance calculations. So because the passengers had been offloaded, the weight of the aircraft had been reduced. And so now with the passengers loaded back in, that wasn't updated. And the system thought that the aircraft was about 4 tons lighter than it actually was. And so throughout this process, there were multiple times where people that were either dispatching the aircraft or flying the aircraft said, I'm not sure that this is right. But no one ever just called it quits and said, okay, what is actually wrong?
Oh, they came so close. So I wonder how many people looked at it and said, this doesn't look right. And just, what's the old saying? If you see something, say something. Not to pull that out. But yeah, things only work, protections and cautions and warnings only work if you actually act on them.
Yeah. And so they actually figured it out. But then they couldn't get a hold of the captain. And so the captain finally gets the load sheet and they believe that the reduced passenger figure is correct. But
because it's not out of the realm of possibility.
right. But there had been a mistake and that they actually had more passengers than they thought. So they take off, and the captain says that the jet was slightly slow to accelerate, but they didn't experience any control difficulties. They're taking off. They get up to about 15,000 feet, and they get an ACARS message that says, hey, the load sheet was incorrect. So they enter a holding pattern, recalculate everything, and then they're off to Sydney.
Okay, all's well that ends well.
So now Qantas introduced, as part of the, let's make sure this doesn't happen again, there is a requirement for a physical passenger head count if there's any discrepancy identified between what the load sheet should say and what other weight and balance information says. And they've expanded their procedures for communicating in flight safety critical information.
Good.
So basically, we need a way to get in touch with you before you depart.
Excellent. Good stuff. Love precautions put into place. After a mishap, learning your lessons and putting procedures into place so it doesn't happen again. That's the best possible outcome.
Let's get towards the end of the episode now, where we talk about Lithuanian cigarette smuggling balloons, or I should say Belarusian cigarette smuggling balloons wafting over into Lithuania. Lithuania has declared this to be a true national security issue. And as part of dealing with that, the commercial side of dealing with that, the government is trying to incentivize nighttime flights to move to Kaunas, away from Vilnius. Local aviation authorities in Vilnius are suspect about this, seeing, well, if they can move that far, why not go to Riga or even further away? So we'll see if any airlines actually do this, but it's interesting that they're trying to solve this problem on a number of different fronts, albeit my idea of just putting up a giant net along the border has not been taken up yet.
That's just a solution. It is just make the flights go elsewhere. That doesn't seem like a solution.
So it can't impact. And this would only, I guess, be at night. Elsewhere, Malaysia says it is resuming the search for MH370. This is the latest search effort. Ocean Infinity, which signed a contract back in the fall, will begin or resume its deep sea search at the end of December. They will search for MH370 along the bottom of the ocean for a total of 55 days, but those days won't all be in a row. So they'll be dependent on availability of the ships as well as weather. Obviously, you can't tow deep sea sonar in extremely rough seas. So good luck to them.
Do we know why this came up? Why now? Why is this coming back up?
They decided that they wanted to continue to pursue the search. And Malaysia said that they're committed to continuing to search for the aircraft. And they reached this agreement. And they said, okay, you got the tools and we'll pay for this and go out and do it.
All right. Can't argue with that, can we? I hope they find it this time.
I hope they find it. Other bittersweet news as far as aircraft are concerned, the Samaritan's Purse DC-8, the last U.S. registered DC-8, operated its last mission at the beginning of November, and getting that confirmation now. They flew to Jamaica with relief supplies for Hurricane Melissa victims. The Samaritan's Purse folks are replacing their DC-8 with a 767. So truly modernizing.
I mean, when you're coming from a DC-8, yeah, I guess. Are there any other active DC-8 operators left in the world, or was this it?
There are. No, there are a few DC-8s still operating. If you are a Miami airport fan, you can usually catch I believe it's Skybus Jet Cargo DC-8. And there are a few others flying around the Caribbean, Latin America, and I think that's it at this point. I will double check and see.
It had to be Miami. It's always Miami. I think we've talked about this before. But of course, if there's a DC-8 left in the world flying, it's going to be Miami or Colombia.
Absolutely.
Or Colombia to Miami.
There it is. We got there in the end. Jason, I've forgotten things before. My watch, forgotten my wallet a couple times, left my keys in the car. That's annoying. I mean, not all like on the same day, But what I've never done is forgotten about a 737 I owned.
Well, you've never had the opportunity, Ian. If you had a 737, I mean, maybe you could forget it.
Possible. But, well, if anyone wants to give me a 737 to see if I lose it, let me know. This is Air India. They owe more than $100,000 in fees and charges related to a 737-200 freighter that they forgot in Kolkata since 2012.
It could have only been Air India.
The best part about this is the aircraft isn't even there anymore.
Well, where is it?
It was auctioned off and trucked away to be used for maintenance training.
I mean, forget being airworthy, but do they at least know where it physically is?
Yeah, they know where it physically is. It turns out that as part of getting rid of this aircraft, they looked at the records and then went to Air India and they're like, hey, you owe us $110,000. And Air India said, we didn't even know we owned this aircraft.
I guess it was a different iteration of Air India, way before the airline was privatized.
So this is way before privatization. So the aircraft had been parked in 2012. It had been kind of just sitting in the grass. And in the middle of November, they sent a truck to pick it up and haul it away so that they could use it for maintenance training. And the airport was like, hey, do you guys want to pay your bill? Maybe. And they said, for what? And they said, the aircraft that you've had parked here for over a decade.
I mean, yeah, you should pay your bills, especially when it comes to 737-200 freighters. But this doesn't surprise me in the least. Air India's had a lot of airplanes over the years. Not exactly the most well-managed airline in the past. So this has happened before. It'll happen again.
And we close the show saying blue skies to former Lufthansa chief pilot Jürgen Raps, who I think if you're an Av geek, you've seen some of his videos on Pilot's Eye TV. He was a major force in German aviation specifically, was a wonderful man and just did an incredible amount for pilots at Lufthansa and in Germany writ large, and was one of the first pilots certified on the A380 and just absolutely loved that aircraft and gave a passionate speech when he found out that Airbus was going to cease production of the A380. So we'll put a link in the show notes to some of his media work that we've seen in the past and some of the really great videos that are out there and some of the tributes that have come in to Captain Raps. So a giant in the aviation industry has passed away at the age of 74. And with that, we say goodbye from episode 349. Jason, welcome back. I hope your jet lag abates and you're on much surer footing for our next episode.
Man, I hope so, because next episode we get to start our, episode number equals aircraft jokes again. So
exactly.
Gotta look forward to that.
Exactly. Stay tuned for that next week. We'll be back with episode 350 then. I am Ian Petchnick here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.